Hi, and thank you for joining this episode of HR and Cocktails. If you're new to us, HR and Cocktails is a podcast about all things HR, from onboarding, training, strategy, engagement, and anything related to the employee life cycle. Today we have with us Cheryl Brown.
Hi, Kimberly.
And today we're going to talk about the risk and liability associated with toxic work cultures. So, Cheryl, tell us about you and, your organization and your role.
Hi, Kimberly. Thanks for having me back.
Yes.
I'm a labor and employment attorney with Davis Agnor, Rapaport, and Skalny. We represent business owners, nonprofit organizations, employers, and everything related to their business. And I head up the labor and employment practice.
That is awesome. Thank you. And before we get started, I do want to let my guests know that this will be, I don't want to say it's going to be your last episode. I really don't.
You don't have to say
It doesn't
that.
have to be your last episode, but Cheryl is moving and taking another opportunity, a great opportunity. I'm very excited for her, but I'm very sad because she has been with me since the very beginning, and she's been on more episodes than anyone else.
Aw,
I know. I
knew Kimberly when she was a little HR person.
I know you did. You
Baby
did.
HR.
I know.
Oh.
Yeah. Before I started the business. Yeah, exactly. So, well, we'll do something special.
Oh,
Yeah,
special.
I know. We'll do something special.
Yes.
But, all right. So let's talk a little bit about our topic first. So let's talk about culture and, what is culture? From your perspective, from an individual, employee, what is culture?
I mean, I personally think culture in the workplace is everything. And maybe because you and I have seen like the worst of the worst and how it impacts the organization, I think a positive, healthy culture can only help the business thrive and increase ROI over years to come. So I think culture is really everything.
Yeah, it definitely is. And it's really the experience that people have in the organization. And I think that's why this conversation is important because, yes, you can have a handbook. Yes, you can say, these are our core values and these are the things. But ultimately, it's the experience that people have and the behaviors that people exhibit in the organization that create the culture. So you mentioned positive work environment, which then there's an opposite to that, which is a toxic work environment.
Yes, exactly.
So talk about what is a toxic work environment.
So, we usually see things as attorneys, we see the worst of the worst when it gets to that point. And so oftentimes with clients, we want to be proactive and avoid any types of toxic work culture. And to me, identifying a toxic work culture is high turnover, employee complaints, anything from, underperforming. So those are the complaints that I have. And so they usually rear their head in ways like, I want to fire someone because they're underperforming. And they've already fired a number of people under a certain supervisor or manager. Or, we want to reorganize because things just aren't working. Or we don't understand why John or Mary, they're not showing up for work. Why they're not, calling in on time. So it will exhibit itself in ways before it even gets to that point of a lawsuit or a claim or anything like that.
Yeah, and I think it's important for us to outline what those, red flags or indicators. They don't always have to be red flags, but indicators of a potential emerging toxic environment could be, so
Right.
you can nip that in the bud.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. But
Exactly.
before we get into that, let's get a drink.
Absolutely.
All right, what kind of drink would you like today? It's your day.
So today,
Yes.
in celebration of my last, possibly last episode,
Yes.
you and I actually selected this together.
We did.
Was it Kir Royale?
Yes. All right.
So I think we should do that.
All right, awesome.
Okay.
Key Royale coming up. So today, our guest Cheryl has chosen a drink, a champagne-based drink, and I looked this drink up to make sure I could say it correctly, and I believe it was pronounced a Key Royale, which in regular people speak is a Kir Royal.
Kir Royal or
Yes,
James Bond
James
movie.
Bond,
Or
exactly.
James Bond movie. I don't know.
Exactly. So what
Kir
made you
Royale.
choose? Yes, what made you choose this drink?
This is actually a fun celebratory drink, as you said.
yes.
But it's a drink that my husband, actually, I'm going to go way back when we
Okay.
first started dating, made it so special that we are going to use it today.
Oh,
So,
wow. Okay.
Shout out to my husband.
Yes, all right. Awesome. So we are going to, I broke out all the good stuff for Cheryl today because it's bittersweet.
I'm worth it.
It is, she's definitely worth it. It's bittersweet, but
Okay.
yeah, but not the drink. The drink is not bittersweet.
No, the drink
it's
is
just-
actually really good.
I know,
But-
it is. But
And
we're
I
gonna
appreciate
also-
you for getting the good shit.
I know.
Just don't aim it towards me.
I'm going to do my best to get this
Okay.
open all together. So, yeah. Fine. And even if I don't, people, you'll never know because they'll fix it. They'll fix it. Yep. You will never know.
Have you done a champagne drink before?
Not on this. I did a French 75, but I had it open already. All right. So here we go.
Away from me.
Away from her.
I'd go that way.
Okay. Hi. Oh my gosh. All right. Not working. You try it.
Oh gosh,
It's your bottle.
it's my model.
It is. I know. I couldn't get a grip on it. I know.
Oh,
Yay!
I think I'm here for you.
Exactly.
There we go.
Exactly. That is yours to keep.
Oh,
That
mine
is
is?
yours to keep. Yes, you have to keep the cork.
There we go.
Exactly. So the other ingredient is creme de cassis, which is which is a black currant liqueur. So we'll start and we'll pour some into our glass. I feel like that was too much, so I'll give that one to you. No, I'll give that one to me.
There
Sorry,
you
I'll
go.
give it to me.
It's really
Give it
just
to
for
me.
color.
It is,
and
and
a little flavor.
Yeah, I totally overdid it, but
that's
it's okay.
It's okay.
All right. And then you'll top that with some champagne. Let's hope that I get. Yeah, no, it was fine. It was the right color. Yeah, it's the right color.
Oh, there you go.
That's a little dark.
Oh,
I'll put
okay.
some more in there. Okay.
A little less. If you
A
make
little
it
less
at home.
than what I did, yeah. Because you just wanted to
Which
have
means
a
that
little
bottle will last years.
bit. Yes,
It will
exactly.
years.
Oh, absolutely, it will. All right. So we'll just put a little bit more in there.
It's okay.
No, I just want the color to be.
No, it's very pretty.
Okay. And then we'll top it with some fresh raspberries.
Oh, look at that.
It's going to be so beautiful.
so beautiful.
All right. Oh, yours is bubbling up. I know. Okay. Well, we'll have to wait for yours. All right.
So we'll just hold on a second. We
Yeah.
can't cheers. You got.
I know yours is still really bubbly. I know. I don't know what we're going to do. Okay. You're going to just have to, I guess, sip yours a little.
Oh, look at that.
I know.
Okay.
All right.
Oh, that.
Oh, that didn't bounce. That didn't.
No, it
No.
doesn't. It's
Okay.
because the liquid. But there was a nice clinking noise earlier.
Mm-hmm.
This is fun.
Very good.
Mm.
Very,
That is
very
nice
good.
champagne.
Well, all right. We'll cheers one more time to Cheryl. And we will not. These are real glasses, I promise you. I don't know why they're making this plastic sound, but they are real.
We're really hoping for the clink.
I know, it was
Maybe someone could put a clink in there. I
yeah,
don't know.
that's what we'll do. We will do that. We'll add a clink to it.
But
all right,
cheers.
Awesome. Yes. Cheers
This
to
is
you,
awesome.
Cheryl.
Awesome,
Cheers to
awesome.
you. Yes. This is so
Oh,
good.
that's
I know.
so good.
It is. It is.
And it's so pretty.
It is pretty as well. Yes. So we were just talking before about the indicators of potentially a not hostile work environment. Listen, it could be hostile. It will be a hostile work environment, but a toxic culture.
Right. Absolutely.
And so some of the early signs, to your point, are, potentially high turnover under a particular manager or lots of complaints. But in order for an organization to identify those things, they have to be paying attention.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the things that you have seen that have worked for organizations for them to identify those things? Is it exit interviews, stay interviews, surveys? What are some of the things that can help them to identify some of those things before they become a true liability?
So I think everything that you mentioned are all important. I love employee engagement surveys. I think that gives an organization a snapshot into why employees feel like they want to work there, why they don't want to work there. If there's a disconnect between what managers and supervisors or executive leadership sees or thinks they see, and then what the employees are really feeling. If employees don't feel engaged at work, they are not going to perform as best. They're not going to perform to the best of their ability.
Yeah.
They're not going to buy into the organization and feel like I'm a part of something in order to, and my contributions are valued. And I think that those type of surveys give you that snapshot as to what they're thinking.
Yeah, no, definitely. They absolutely do. And I also think that it's important to also understand that current employees, depending on the trust level and depending on a lot of things in the organization, because if the trust has been eroded due to lack of engagement, lack of integrity, toxicity, et cetera, they may not be as open in some of those surveys.
Right.
So I think it's also important. So I had a client that the exit interviews were broken out. We put them into Google Forms so that we could get data on the back end pretty quickly.
Right.
And so it was dropped down on managers. So you could actually look at that manager and see all of the feedback for that manager, and it became very clear that manager had a lot of turnover. However, that particular industry and that particular role, and we're in Baltimore, right?
Right.
So people didn't really want to say even on their way out the door.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the data was saying this department has some kind of a problem.
Right.
But the leaders, and so this is where I want to ask the question, the leaders, though, did not want to do anything because they felt like they didn't have a smoking gun. They were like, well, I can't really point it to anything in particular. I'm like, well, that's where employment at will comes in.
Right. Right.
Because
we don't necessarily want to reach a point where we're pointing to something
that
particular.
part.
Right?
Exactly. And so, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And I was just like, but we don't have to have that person slapped them.
Right.
You're right. You don't want to get to that point. But if the numbers are telling you that turnover is 50% in this department in a role that is a very hard to fill clinical role.
Right.
We just need to do something anyway for business reasons. But above and beyond, it's like, so what have you seen as it relates to, organizations, having that data, not having that data, acting on that data, et cetera?
Couple thoughts. One, it always makes me nervous when an organization doesn't want to gather information. They want to avoid it because that right there tells you that it's not an engaged workforce or that they don't want to they don't value that, right? So that would be one kind of red flag. The other red flag is making sure you invest in your managers and supervisors in having those courageous conversations or those difficult conversations and training them to feel like that they can have those, whether it's the manager managing the manager or the manager managing a staff member, making sure you have those conversations and creating a safe environment to have those, to actually value those and encourage that honest feedback. The other thing that we've learned, and you know this as well as I do, that just because you're a manager doesn't mean you know how to manage.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Right? So I think while we may have our star performer, and we're like, oh, they're going to be a great manager, we want to make sure that they have the tools and the techniques to become a great manager, because ultimately the employees, again, as we know, will leave because of their managers. So it's placing value on that, providing them a safe environment to engage in those conversations, providing them the tools to have those conversations, and then being, I guess, courageous enough to identify or be willing to identify if you have a toxic workplace, being open to that.
Yeah, I think, yes, all of those things, all of those things.
Yeah.
And it's important because if you're not willing to acknowledge that there could be a problem, you can't correct it.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
you can't correct it.
Absolutely.
And also, to your point, if you don't train your managers, because I also don't think that organizations understand that there's my favorite, vicarious liability, that there's vicarious liability.
It's a legal word.
It is a legal word,
Very
they
nice.
taught it to me as SHRM. And so that there's vicarious liability. So the organization can't just say, oh, it was just this person. Well, if they're a manager, they're a representative of the organization.
Absolutely.
And so the organization has a responsibility to make sure that the managers have been trained. Now, after they've been trained, if they choose to just go off on their own and act in a rogue manner, it doesn't necessarily remove the liability from the organization, but it definitely helps that you can say, well, we train them. These are our policies. This is what we've told them, et cetera. But when you don't do any of those things, there's a challenge.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And, as it relates to risk then and liability for the organization, there are times where an organization prides itself on having a certain type of culture, which ultimately can be a liability in itself, right?
Depending on the culture.
Exactly. So there are cultures where they're like, we just move fast here. Everything just moves fast. Well, there are people who may be neurodiverse that aren't able to move at that pace.
Right.
And the pace isn't even necessary. Much of it is self-imposed, and it's because they feel overly important. Everyone there, it's usually not even necessary. So then a neurodiverse individual then doesn't fit in, not for any legitimate business reason other than we just move fast here.
Right.
So from your perception, that's just one example. From your perception, are there times where just the nature of the culture, which the organization has created, could create a liability and there's no real reason for it?
So the one thing that I thought of, so a lot of workplaces that, let's say, value employee engagement, want to create a positive workplace, part of that is they will implement, we'll just say, social activities, things that are outside of the workplace. They want to encourage employees to participate in whatever extracurricular that is in order to team build or whatever. So you are balancing at that point many different personalities of employees. You're balancing your introverts versus your extroverts. You're balancing, like you said, those with neurodiversities. You're balancing cultural aspects of engagement.
Yeah.
So you want to be cognizant of who your workforce is and what you are asking them to do above and beyond what their normal workday is.
Yes.
So company culture or workplace culture doesn't always have to be how many baseball games you go to, because not everybody can go to a baseball game after work. I was just using that as an example. You have people who have little kids, people who are taking care of their elderly parents. And you don't want to expose your organization to being like, well, why did Kimberly not come to the family picnic or the Orioles game? And her having to say, well, I actually have to take care of my elderly parent and I'm not able to do that. Because now we have all this knowledge that we don't really want to know. So you want to think about your employees and create opportunities that can build that culture, whether it's through your managers or supervisors. Maybe it's just a small lunch during the workday. Maybe it's just having coffee with your team every other week. There are ways to engage and instill workplace without imposing things on there that are going to open you up to liability that you didn't even think about. Because you were like, oh, everybody should want to go to a baseball game.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Or everyone should want to have a one-on-one lunch with their manager.
Right.
So there was an instance in an organization that I worked at where there was a gentleman who was of a particular religion where he could not be alone with a woman. Right? Okay. And so his manager was a woman. And so they required everyone to have one-on-one lunches with their direct reports. And he was like, I cannot do that. My religion does not allow me to be alone with another woman that's not my wife, period. Right? And for whatever reason, the organization felt like they needed to find a way to make that happen. I'm like, why? Why? Like, leave it alone. Yeah. You don't need to figure that out.
There are other ways to engage.
Exactly.
Without violating any religious beliefs.
Exactly. So that is an example of a time where I'm just like, it's not a requirement. Like, seriously, let it go.
But you just have to think through who your workforce is and how best to engage with them.
Yes.
You can create positive workplaces.
You can.
In many different ways.
You absolutely can. And I think that, it also comes down to thinking about, from a liability perspective, the same way that you would have to defend that claim if that gentleman brought it against you, if you denied him advancement opportunities, et cetera, because he didn't go on these one-on-one, he wasn't engaged in building level 5 relationships and all of the things, right?
Right.
You'd have to say that there was a legal, that there was a business reason for this.
Right.
That's what you would have to defend. And so if you don't have that, then your cultural norms don't override the legal responsibility that you have if you were to impact this gentleman because he didn't do those things, right? Exactly. And I think that that's kind of the intersection of culture and liability. One example, I'm sure there are so many others. So as you're thinking about organizations and all of the things along the way, because there are so many activities that we have and interactions that we have with the workforce, right? How does an organization audit for vulnerabilities in those various interactions along the way?
Okay, so many things. Well, again, I think first and foremost, the company has to be willing to kind of evaluate or conduct this type of audit and invest that time in looking to see if there are any vulnerabilities. And when we look at the vulnerabilities, there's so many aspects that we can look at. And I think we've mentioned a couple of them. Is there, well, if you have a survey, you can always look at the results of the survey. You can look at that. If you see an area that may be underperforming or has high turnover, we definitely want to evaluate the why, what's going on in that situation to make sure that we can identify if it's something as simple as miscommunication. Is it a situation where someone doesn't feel comfortable with someone? The other thing that you're going to want to look at is, well, I guess I said communication, but in performing, how many complaints people have made about a supervisor or their fellow employees. Are employees asking for more time off, working from home, as opposed to coming into the organization? What does that look like? And then how much do your supervisors and managers know in handling those situations? So if there's a disconnect and they're always, let's say, going to HR, or they don't know how to answer those questions, or they're answering the questions in a way that exposes them to liability before they get to HR, or at least before they get to executive leadership, that's a huge red flag as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, like you said, the surveys, the, exit interviews, stay interviews, those are always, but you have to ask the right questions.
Right.
I think that a lot of times people ask, like, are you satisfied with pay? Are you satisfied with benefits? It's like, listen, that's not why people leave organizations for the most part. Yeah, you can ask that question, but that's not really the purpose of those type of interviews. We need to be asking questions about their experience. Was there ever a time where they felt uncomfortable? What could we have done to address that? Just asking those difficult questions, but to your point, that goes to, are you willing to receive that information?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. But those are opportunities for us to get that information, but we have to ask the right questions.
Right.
Yeah.
So to that point, I'm going to give a shout out to everybody knows Gallup poll. So Gallup did a employee engagement survey of like the top 500 companies, and this was well before COVID. And they really wanted to understand what big corporations and what companies did to increase employee engagement. And the book's called First Break All the Rules, and it talks about the top questions that you can ask employees, none of which, have to do with pay or anything like that. So it's a great book.
Yes.
If you really want to, if you value and you want to invest in really looking at your employee engagement or your work culture, it's a great book to look at. I normally don't recommend books. So Kimberly's not promoting this, but I'm just saying.
I talk about
first
books
break all
too.
the rules.
Yes, and also they have the Q12 as well.
Yes.
So they have the Q12, and I do think that those questions in the Gallup Q12 are really, and you can go to the Gallup website to find this. But the Q12
There's 12 questions.
Yep. So the Q12 has a lot of great things that really drill down to what you need to ask, because I think sometimes we just scrape the surface and ask the things that are easy, but it's difficult sometimes to get that hard feedback. We really cannot correct things if we do not know what the real problem is.
Right.
And at the top, we anecdotally think we know what the problem is.
Right.
We're like, oh, I think it's this, I think it's that. But when you ask the question, a lot of times the answer that you get is nothing like what you thought.
Right. And you have to be willing to accept that.
Yes.
Just as much as we are willing to write honest, constructive criticism in our performance evaluations, we want our employees to do the same for us, or we're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
That's exactly right. Exactly. So, as it relates to culture, toxicity, liability, how do we create accountability inside organizations without triggering fear for employees?
So I think everything comes from the top down. And if your executive leadership team buys into accountability, again, creating that safe environment for accountability, then it trickles down to your supervisors and managers, because you as a supervisor or manager have to be held accountable to your team, and then everyone has individual accountability as well. But if everybody feels that there's open and honest communication and that they understand the impact on the entire organization, not just, oh, I'm impacting Kimberly or Kimberly's impacting me. It's the impact on the entire team. You have to have these conversations around accountability. And it's, again, if the executive leadership is holding everyone to that and creating that environment that we're okay, that's fine. But if there's a disconnect between the supervisors and managers and the executive leadership team, or the employees and the managers, it's not gonna work.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's also important to recognize that accountability is essential, because if people see that people are not being held accountable, that becomes the organization condoning whatever that behavior, whatever those activities are. And it also encourages other people to not do what they're supposed to do.
Right.
Because if other people aren't being held accountable, then clearly this culture does not require us
Right.
to do
Right.
the things that they say we're supposed to do.
Right.
So holding people accountable isn't negative. And I think that sometimes people look at it as, well, I don't want people to feel like everything they do. It's like, no, we have a culture and we have the responsibility as leaders to protect that culture, to make sure that that culture is what it's supposed to be, and that other people don't define what it is through their either lack of accountability or their bad behaviors.
Right.
For sure.
And I think attendance, time and attendance and tardiness is probably like the easiest example, because people think, oh, well, I'm late, or, I don't call out when I should call out, or I don't follow the rules. And there is it's a disrespectful kind of attitude. But if everybody does it, including executive leadership, you're going to have a really hard time when you terminate that person for attendance or tardiness, defending that, because you've allowed every other person in the organization to become late, and now you're targeting an individual who may be, and I'll just say, someone who's pregnant or someone who's a veteran, and that's where that protected class, and that opens you up to discriminatory action because you're not consistent with enforcing your policies and procedures and holding them accountable.
Exactly. And so those liabilities can be hidden because you may not know that that person was pregnant yet. You may not know that that person was a veteran. You may not know that that person had a disability because it wasn't visible. So we have to manage to liability that we don't even know is there.
Right.
And if we do that, then we just call Cheryl and say hi.
Oh, hi. How can I help you?
I know, exactly. Well, thank you so much for diving into this conversation with me today.
Absolutely.
And, I'm going to miss you so much, and hopefully we'll get to
you.
do this again soon.
Absolutely.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Yes. And thank you for joining us for this episode of HR and Cocktails.